Okay, colleagues, members of the public, good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting in Croydon here. Can we now get straight into the agenda, Part A? We've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2014. Agreed, thank you very much. Apologies for absence, Jim, do we have any?
Leader, I've received no apologies for absence.
Thank you, Jim. Disclosures of interest, I'll assume they are as as registered by members. No others have been advised. No. Urgent business, there is none. Exempt items, agree the split, but I'm not sure there is one. And that's because we're very much about transparency here and having everything in Part A of the agenda where we can. And if we could move on to agenda item 6, which is a hugely important piece of work, the flood prevention and winter preparations ahead of well, it's been a late summer, but a very serious issue as we saw last year for this borough when we were hit hard by the floods. And we're determined as an administration that's here for the whole of Croydon to ensure we're doing everything we can within some very, very constrained budgets that have been cut by central government to make sure that the people of Croydon are protected as much as humanly possible in the winter that will no doubt be with us at some point. Councillor Cathy B.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just introduce the report briefly. I know there were quite a lot of questions. Firstly, the report is about two things. It's about the preparation in terms of our roads and footways for cold weather, and also our preparations in terms of flooding, flooding measures. Just very briefly in terms of roads, there is a maintenance plan that's attached to the report. So for those of you who want the detail, that's there. The report sets out a bit of detail about sort of a key thing about how much salt we've got. And just to say, it says we've got 3,039 tonnes of salt. And just to put that in perspective, if we do have a very heavy winter, we will need more than that. But we already have an agreement in place to ensure that that is already stocked by our provider and that will be made available to us. So that's really one of the key things in terms of preparedness for the winter. I think most people are interested in the flood prevention. So just to be clear, what we have here is detail of a set of measures that we are taking now in order to minimise or reduce the risk of flooding. I know that people who live in the areas that flooded last winter will be very, very anxious. So what we are doing is a number of measures to increase the flow of the water, to enable us to store water, more water, if that is necessary. And we've also got measures in place to take water in terms of the catering board, to bypass the culvert that has a small capacity and which caused quite a lot of problems there. So you will see on page 7 there are a number of different actions that we are taking there. It says short and medium term measures. It doesn't mean that they last in the short term. They are measures that we can do now to help us right away. So we are clearing trash screens, we are clearing vegetation, we're clearing out ditches to make sure that the water flows. 250 truckloads of silt have been taken out of the balancing pond at Purley Oaks. We're increasing the capacity at Bourne View for holding water. And also the Sutton and East Surrey Water Company have a pipe that goes from, normally it takes water for treatment from Purley to Godstone Road. That can be used when the catering board is flowing at a capacity that the smaller culvert can't take. We now have arrangements in place so that we can use that to take water out before it gets to the low capacity part and put it back in further downstream. So that again should help. So what we've done, what we are in the process of doing is putting in place a number of measures to reduce the risk of flooding. We also have more pumps available and sandbags, so we are more prepared. In the longer term, we have bid to the Environment Agency and we are allocated £1 million. We've bid jointly with Surrey for some work in the Caterham catchment area. We are currently, we have £120,000 to carry out a feasibility study. The exact application of the £1 million will be dependent on what that feasibility study tells us. The feasibility study is due in May, and we have a profile of spend that spreads over about 5 years. But I mean, it's going to depend very much on the nature of the work, how that work has to be prepared for and spent, because it's going to depend on what you actually have to do to design and implement the scheme. So, and also the total of money will dependent on what the feasibility study tells us. I will leave that there because I'm sure, I'm aware there are quite a lot of questions to come.
Thank you very much indeed, Cathy. A number of questions. I've seen Councillor Steve O'Connell, Councillor Tim Pollard, Councillor Vinnie Mohan to start with, and then we'll go round again. Don't worry.
Thank you very much, Leader. I've got, if I may, a few questions, some of detail, some clarification. First of all, I'm pleased that a paper's come here tonight on this very important item, speaking particularly as a Kenley Council, and Jan Buttinger's here also. And it's important that work is done to attempt to prevent as much as possible, bear in mind we're talking about nature, the repeat of those terrible events many months ago. And it did particularly affect Kenley and Purley. You'll hear from a Purley councillor a little bit later. So I support in principle the fact that we have some measures here, but I have some questions around that. First question I have, which you will be aware about the repair and refund fund of £5,000. There's extreme difficulties being found with the claims. There's been a lot of pushback by the insurance companies, and I'd like to know what we're doing to support that. You've talked about the short to medium term measures, which again I welcome under 3.16.2. I'd like to know when are these all going to be completed by. I do welcome that the money's been found, but I'd like you to confirm that all those measures will be completed in time for any severe weather, inclement weather this winter. There's a lack of information about what Surrey has done. Now, you'll be aware that a lot of the problems were stemming from surface water flow from the Surrey Hills. My residents are very conscious of that, and there's a complete lack here in what measures that Surrey themselves have, not in the long term, but are putting in place immediately. So we need some comfort around that. Now, you talked about the £1 million bid, and I'm pleased to learn that it is successful. Now, it was, and we do remember that terrible events some months ago, and we do remember that was some time ago. I do regret, I have to say, that the funding won't be available until financial year 16-17. What that in fact means is that there will be 2 winters between the tragic events of many months ago and when some serious infrastructure remedies will be put in place. I would suggest that is far too long. I would have had the expectation through you, Leader. Can
we have some questions, not speeches, please?
Okay. Well, the question is, why has it taken 2 whole winters for us to actually deliver the infrastructure remedies? I would have thought next year, not 2 years' time. And one thing I would like to comment on, and a question, is people are very fearful out there. There's going to be some very bad weather in the coming days. The rains are coming, and people need reassurance. They're very nervous, and I want to know what you're going to do and what the council are going to do about reassuring our residents that these measures are being put in place.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is going to take a number of questions, but I think there, Steve, that you said 2 winters. Well, we've only been here as a current administration less than 5 months, so I think you need to reflect across that. And of course, you are representatives of the of a Conservative Party that nationally has targeted local government disproportionately to any other public service. So this administration, very much like yourselves, actually, is having to deal with £90 million of cuts that your ministers who you support and Gavin Barwell votes for in Parliament have taken out of local government funding. So this is a paper in far greater detail than anything we saw produced last year. But what we'll do, we'll take some questions.
Lady, you're missing the point. This is about people's livelihoods, and this is about delay in delivery. Delay in delivery.
Yeah, thank you for interrupting, but we're trying to have a mature debate here. It's also about if the government cuts the funding from local governments like Croydon, it's much tougher to deal with these issues, but we've made it a priority, unlike your administration. Councillor Pollard.
I'm conscious that this debate has to be rattled through reasonably sharply because Councillor B has to rush off to chair the Traffic Management Advisory Committee starting at 7 o'clock. Can I just have your assurance that we won't in the future have a situation where members of the Cabinet and members of the Shadow Cabinet and backbenchers have to leave Cabinet during the course of the evening because we've scheduled two important committees on the same night, please?
Well, we try and manage business as well as we can, but we've got a lot of important business that we're bringing through, so you can't have a guarantee, but we try and do the best we can. Councillor Simon Brew.
Thank you, Leader. I'm a councillor for Purley, and my constituents in Dale Road, the Foxley Lodge Residents Association, have applied for a repair and renew grant, and they were very disappointed to find it had been turned down. The circumstances of turning down, it says the properties mentioned in your application were not the habitual internal areas of the premises, which is true because they were the garage, or properties were not directly affected by the flooding. Well, they absolutely were, because all the garages in this lodge were flooded to a depth of several feet, and they stayed like that for 4 weeks. So I'm extremely concerned to hear this application has been turned down. I wonder if the committee member, the Cabinet member, could perhaps meet my residents to discuss how we resolve this.
Yeah, I'm sure Councillor B would be happy to have that meeting, because I don't think it's appropriate we get into the individual level of detail at Cabinet that you were touching on there. I'll bring Councillor Mohan in, then I'll ask Cathy B and the officers, if appropriate, to respond. Councillor Vili Mohan.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm trying to keep this debate at a civilised level, as you seem to suggest. But I think I must come back to the whole timing issue that Councillor O'Connell talked about, because while we welcome the £841,000 investment, your financial expenditure table on page 10 talks about the £841,000 in year 2014-15, whereas in the actual text on para 3.16 onwards, you say that some of these measures would only be in the financial year 16-17. So it's really unclear exactly when this is going to be spent. And as Councillor O'Connell reiterated, it's going to be 2 winters, it looks like, before these flood prevention measures are actually going to be put in place. I mean, last year when we had the flooding, we found the resources to actually help the residents as and when they were needed. Despite all the reductions in public sector spending, we as an administration found the resources, and I think really your administration needs to do the same, and needs to do the same quickly. Can I, just moving away from the specific flood defence measures, can I just also ask on your winter service policy statement, paragraph 1.4, where you talk about salt bins, what is your current policy on actually installing salt bins in particular streets where residents want it? Because we get a lot of requests. What is your policy? What is your criteria on that?
Thank you very much. Just for the record, because I think it's always important we have the record straight on these issues. The previous administration brought a paper on flooding in 2012 and did not act on the recommendations of that paper. The money that you're talking about that you invested was after half of Kenley was underwater last year. Councillor Cathy B.
I'll try and take all the questions in order. Firstly, in terms of the claims, it is a requirement that the insurance claim is finished first in terms of the way that they work. We can ask officers to liaise with residents and see if they're having problems and see what we can do to help. But obviously, yeah, there is clearly a requirement there in terms of the insurance company. So, and I'm aware that there has been a bit of a stumbling block. In terms of timing, the work is ongoing and is scheduled to be finished by the middle of November. So I think, Councillor Mohan, I think there's a bit of confusion there. The work in that table, that's all due to be done middle of November, so it will be done in time for this winter. The longer time frame only refers to the £1 million. Surrey, we have agreed with Surrey a procedure for releasing water between Surrey and Croydon. The £1 million, I mean, partly its availability is going to depend on the nature of the works, because there's going to be an issue in terms of designing any scheme, and we will be able to sort out, we'll be able to review the expenditure in line a bit when we know more about what the nature of the scheme is going to be. So once we have that feasibility study in, we'll be able to share it with you, and we'll be able to at that point, look at the quickest and most expedient way of getting it done, and how that fits in with the grant, and take it from there. And I know that residents will be very fearful. We have in line, we have a number of communications lined up. So we're going to refresh the flooding information on the website for completion by the 3rd of November. We're going to use the information in the York Croydon bulletins, again with the bulletin with the week commencing the 3rd of November. There's going to be a video launched on YouTube highlighting real-life stories and with information about what people can do to help in terms of preparing for rainy weather and protecting their homes. And there'll be an article in the York Croydon e-magazine scheduled to go out on the 24th of the 11th. And we'll also be using social media so that we can alert people when things are happening. So there's a whole range of communications that will be going out. And I'm sure one of the key things will be that residents will want to know about the things that we've done. So it is important that we put that out there. I think that the only other was salt bins, and I will actually ask officers to come back on the salt bin issue, and also any other points that they think there's more information to be added. Yes,
Steve, can I ask you to add anything else that you wish there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. Just particularly around salt bins, there is a criteria in place. Unfortunately, it's not shared within the policy, but I'll have that circulated round. So there's a criteria in place which takes into account the gradient of the area or the road for which it's required. It also takes into account that, obviously, the property for which it's going outside, that we do seek approval from that particular resident, because to make sure that they're comfortable with it being outside their house. But again, I can circulate the criteria for members if that's helpful. In terms of the flooding side of things, it's worth just picking up on Councillor Brew's point there about the application being declined and not wanting to get into too much detail. The criteria is quite clear. It's only for properties that are habitable, so garage areas are not included. So that's the reason why it would have been declined. Around the issues around Surrey County Council and the agreement that we have in place with them, we've arranged a process that enables us to manage the flow of water through through Surrey into Croydon and out through into the River Wandle. So we have the ability to control it. So there's trigger points in place that will say there's flow of water coming down, so we can slow it down and or increase it. So make sure that we've got a consistent flow rather than a surge of water coming down as we experienced last year. So I think I've probably covered everything there.
Thank you. Very quickly,
Thank you, Steve Isles. And again, I thank Steve for everything he does. It is appreciated. Just when you go back to the intermediate short-term measures, you're saying that all those measures are going to be carried out in time for this winter's flooding. Is that, I mean, this might be an answer for Steve, does that include the £350,000 capital spend on the culverts around Dale Road?
It includes all the measures that's highlighted in the report, the capital expenditure, which is looking at the long-term solution with Dale Road, and that's picking up off the CCTV surveys we've had done, and also the feasibility. What we don't want to do is to jump in with doing some short-term works that are not going to have any longevity. So what we have done as a mitigation is to introduce the bypass pipe, which is taking use of the Sutton and East Surrey water pipe to be able to bypass Dale Road.
Just for the sake of accuracy, the answer was not, and thank you, Cathy, for what you've done, was not absolutely correct. That 350k is not going to be spent and invested this winter. It's going to be post this winter, Steve. I'm correct.
I think what we need to look at some of the long-term funding, the £1 million we're waiting for your government to deliver. I would hope that members opposite me at the moment would help us in terms of getting them to speed that up. I've seen Councillor Sherwin Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. Just asking one question through you to Councillor Mohan. He said we would like to have a civilised manner discussion. What does he exactly mean by civilised manner? Because I don't think there anything uncivilised going on.
No, we're not. I can't really give Councillor Mohan a platform here, and I'm not sure we're going to hear quite enough of him throughout the evening, I think. So we'll save that. Well, it'll have to be very, very brief because look, we're not going round. Everyone's had one question, and now everyone wants two. Simon, as you're new.
Thank you very much, Leader. This is a very quick one, I promise you. About 10 days ago, Dale Road flooded over to pavement level, and the residents got out their buckets to try and clear it. Subsequent discussion, I understand that the statement is the gullies are cleaned between 1 and 4 times a year. I'm extremely keen that Dale Road is regarded in the category as cleaned 4 times a year rather than 1, because 1 clearly is not enough, as we found out. Thank you.
OK, we'll take that as a comment. Councillor Pollard.
Earlier you made a remark about a paper that you suggest the previous administration took to Cabinet. I've just been through the entire set of minutes for that year and I can't find any reference to it. So can you tell us when it is you think this happened?
Yeah, I'll get the Democratic Services officers to write to you with the details on that. But I think you need to be careful because you are talking about officers in public and they will write to you with the details. So can we agree the paper, colleagues? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor B, and thank you very much, Steve, on that very important issue. If we could now move on to the Office for Residential Conversions in Croydon, and can I ask Councillor Butler to take us into this one? And we've got a short presentation.
Thank you. I'm sure that this is a report that will have cross-party support. It is brought forward by this administration, but I know some of this work was felt equally by the party opposite when they were in administration around what permitted development could be doing to our town. And so what we're looking at, just very briefly, is the difference in the Mayor of London space standards to some of the stuff that's coming forward to our town for permitted development. So if we look at some typical housing, so these are 7 dwellings on each of these pictures. The first one is one that's agreed under planning consent, and the second 2 are non-compliant with the Mayor of London space standards and come in under permitted development. So if we could look at the next slide, this is under the Mayor of London's housing space standards, and it's a studio or a one-person apartment. If we look at the second slide, the next slide, this is coming in at a much lower standard under permitted development, and it's 20.7 square metres in comparison to the earlier one. And if we look at the next, this one's coming in even lower at 13.5 square metres under permitted development. That's a studio, a home for one person. And if we just slip onto the last slide, and I think that shows you the difference, what's actually coming forward under permitted development and what people would be expected to live in. So thank you for the slides. I'd just like to that, and I'm going to ask some of my lovely councillors, perhaps. Andrew, do you mind going and standing over there on the corner of that white line? Hamida, do you mind standing on that white line there? Going to put the lights on. Lovely. Elisa, could you stand up? And Richard, can I ask you too? Sorry. This is 13.5 square metres. This little box that these 4 are standing at the edges of is the 13.5 square metres that we're expecting some people to live in. And this includes their bedroom, this includes their living area, this includes their toilet, their sink, their shower unit and their kitchenette. And so that's what we're talking about. Thank you very much, you four. Thank you. That this report does have cross-party support because it's about making Croydon a great place to live. It's about decent homes, but also about delivering the jobs that we desperately need. Because it's about a supportive planning policy towards office development, and it's about ensuring that Croydon has the infrastructure to support those coming to live in, particularly the town centre. And of course we want new homes in Croydon, and our growth promise has shown this, but we don't want homes delivered at any cost. And each new generation has the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of the past And we know that our life is busier and more hectic, and for many people their home is their only sanctuary. And we know that when people live in these cramped conditions, and we're talking about a one-person flat, but we know that there'll be 2 people living in some of these places, and we know that there'll be babies. And we also know that the permitted development that's coming through at 2 and 3 bedrooms is also well under the Mayor of London space standards. So homes should be about places where people can live. And this is not a report about preserving outdated office space, because what we're saying is that does need to be replaced. And it does need to be replaced with sometimes with new offices, and sometimes it will be with residential. But that residential should come through the planning process, and it should meet standards, and it should be of benefit to all the people of Croydon. There are many good developers out there currently building or planning to build new homes in Croydon, and they're happy to come in and have a conversation and build decent homes that they can be proud of. So what their properties look like, how big their rooms will be, and what impact they'll have on the town centre. We've got many developers also keen to create new office space in Croydon, and we can see that happening at the moment and going on board in Ruskin Square. So I hope that tonight, this is about the way people live, it's about preserving and bringing jobs into the town, and I hope we can have full support. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Alison, and I think that's a very powerful message. And quite uniquely, I was at the London Councils, which, for anyone that doesn't know, represents all 32 London boroughs last week, and it doesn't happen very often, but there was complete cross-party agreement from every council leader in Croydon about, in London about this policy, and I hope the message is ringing out loud and clear from here to 1 or 2 people. You may just be able to get away with this in the remaining few months of the current government under current legislation, but we really are asking you to come in and talk to us and provide decent accommodation for the people of Croydon, because otherwise, frankly, you're not welcome here. Any questions from colleagues? Councillor Jason Perry.
Thank you very much. I note the report. I think we all note the report, and I think it's true to say we are in agreement that these particular permitted development rights don't work in the interests of this town. As you rightly say, the previous Conservative administration did seek an exemption from these rights, and much as you've been pushed back, we were pushed back as well by the government. I think the fact that Boris, as a Conservative mayor, brought in the space standards for London is a very good thing that he achieved, and to see that these permitted development rights are actually circumnavigating those standards that have been brought in, which you've ably demonstrated tonight, I think is a great shame. I think Croydon was already at the forefront of converting office to resi, taking those blocks that weren't appropriate and converting them. I think many developers find converting housing easy, and therefore it's a shame that we then end up with the things that you see at 3.10 in this report, with substandard accommodation coming through. So I wish the administration well with pursuing this policy. My only question, and I guess it's probably going to be in what actually comes at the end, but how are you going to monitor the fact of how successful you will be with this? Is there going to be some sort of milestones? Are you going to keep it under review? Will it come back to this cabinet?
Can I take that in a minute? I'll just take Councillor Sarah Bashford as well.
Thank you. I welcome the information that's in this paper and support it. But what I'm slightly concerned about is that you're talking about standards of room sizes, but actually the council is using somewhere like Regent's House Hotel in Friends Road, which I know is used for temporary accommodation, but that temporary accommodation is actually housing families for significant periods of time. And looking at pictures of that accommodation, the toilet has a shower over it. Then they're hardly separate. The kitchen can be touched from the end of a child's bed. So clearly I would think that the space standards in places like that aren't being adhered to, and I would ask that you could go away and look at that and just see whether the accommodation that we're offering families actually is suitable.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Alison Butler.
Thank you. Firstly, can I welcome Jason's comment? I know that this was something he felt strongly about, and we will continue that work, hopefully with your support, and we will certainly continue to monitor it, and I'm happy to bring a report back to Cabinet at some stage looking at how this has progressed. On Sarah's comment, I completely accept that some of the accommodation, in fact a lot of the accommodation we use for emergency, and that's nightly paid accommodation, and we've never claimed it, and I know that Dudley didn't in his previous day, is fit for families to be lived in. It is emergency accommodation, it's nightly paid accommodation. As soon as we possibly can, we have those families moved out of that accommodation, but no, it doesn't meet space standards. It's not good for housing for families to live in, but we are facing a housing crisis in this borough. There is a lack of investment from central government in housing. We're desperately trying to up those levels of affordable housing. We've got 800 new social housing units starting to be developed this year. But no, we want to get those families out of that accommodation as soon as possible.
I think we can all agree on that, and I think, you know, when the national political debate is about devolution, the fact that the Mayor of London can be overruled by Whitehall and Eric Pickles is a sad state of affairs indeed for governance in this country. Okay, can we agree the report? Thank you. If we could move on then to number 8, contracts. This is here to note. Simon, anything to add?
No, just by way of explanation on one item that I know it's been raised, is the extension of the contracts for SEN coach and minibus, is so that they all finish at the same time to allow the procurement strategy to follow through, and so that there is an organised transfer from existing providers to whoever appears in the framework once the procurement has been completed.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Maria Gatland.
Thank you very much, Leader. SEN transport is, of course, a very sensitive area and a difficult area, often with rising demand. I see that you're looking to save 10%. Can you reassure me, really, and indeed the users of this service, that the drive for these savings will not compromise the service to quite vulnerable users? Thank you.
And Jason.
Yeah, I've got several questions with regard to the disposal of Addington Palace golf course. One is around the openness and transparency with which the documentation relating to this particular disposal was made available, or rather not made available, to councillors. When the Cabinet papers came out, there were no papers online for this, and none were distributed with the Cabinet papers. It was only subsequent to my querying this that any papers were placed online, and no one was made aware of that after the event. I had a number of residents query where these papers were or what was going on. There were none. There are none in the Cabinet papers that have been distributed. The additional papers have not been distributed tonight, but they have belatedly been placed online. So could I get some assurance that we will actually get all of the papers that relate to items in the future?
Well, yeah, we made that very clear indeed. So I'm disappointed to hear if anything wasn't online, but I think officers are hearing what you say now, and we'll check that. But no, we're very clear indeed. Everything will be online and should be online at the earliest possible opportunity. I mean, what I would ask, if that happens again, don't hesitate to contact Simon or Julie Belvier, or, you know, let us know as soon as possible, and we'll make sure anything's put online. I've got both the Councillor Meads next. Who wants to go? Oh, sorry, Jason, you want to come back?
Oh, no, I'm not coming back. I said I had several questions. That was one.
Okay, well, we'll carry on then for a while.
Thank you. Within the paper, it states that one of the justifications for this disposal is that you expect to make a saving of £80,000 a year with regard to reduced repayment and interest payments on debt. And you state that this is made as a comparison between the £60,000 per annum rent that was being received from this asset. Within that section in the justification, it doesn't point out that within 5 years we would have been getting £80,000 anyway, at which point there would be no effective saving, and after 10 years we would be going to market rental value for that previous agreement, which probably means that within 10 years this would be making a loss in terms of your justification for why it was being sold. Another question. In 2004, when the lease was last renegotiated for a period of 75 years, £1 million was received as a capital receipt, plus rent for the next 75 years. We are now disposing of the asset for a period of 999 years
for a undisclosed figure, because I understand that that is Part B, but then receiving no rent. Well, there is a Part B, you just haven't been distributed it. I want to suggest that this doesn't represent good value for money, in that a much better renegotiation of this lease was achieved in 2004. And final question, and perhaps this is the most important, with regard to the future use of this land, in points 4.3 and 4.4, it states in 4.3 that it would be highly unlikely that this land would be made available for housing. Since we would remain the freeholders, why does it not say that it would not be made available for housing if we retain control over it? And I wonder if that's related to point 4.4, where it says that if it were, that the council would benefit from any increase in the value of the land that might subsequently result.
Thank you. There's a lot of detailed questions there, so while Richard's working on those, I'll bring in Councillor Meads. Margaret first.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, my feeling was as well, this is an important matter in the Heathfield ward. You know, you say you're open and transparent, but actually, out of courtesy, why weren't the local councillors notified of this before the papers came out? That's normal practice. And actually on page 3 it does say agenda part B, none, when clearly there were yellow papers. So why were the yellow papers not put with this paper, and why did everything go online so late?
Thank you, Dudley.
Yes, almost the same sort of point. I really actually asked the leader if you would seriously reconsider perhaps bringing corporate services back in some guise, because quite frankly, what we have on this paragraph 4.1 tells us absolutely nothing about the disposal of Addington Palace Golf Club. And I'm relying on my memory, and if I'm wrong, I apologise to everybody, but I think I disposed, when I was in charge of assets, disposed of a leasehold interest. So I presume if we're doing something else, we're parting with a freehold interest. But I have absolutely no idea what you're doing. I've no idea what the quantum is, and I've no idea whether it's good value for money. But in the terms of principle, this would have been dealt with in detail at the old corporate services, and it wouldn't even be before us. It would have been, it wasn't a political committee in the past. There was 95% plus agreement on both sides of the council, and everybody was content as to what was going on. I find this very unsatisfactory, and if, as I suspect, you're disposing of the freehold interest, then I would actually think it's a pretty foolish thing to be doing, because, you know, when you've got a long leasehold, lessees tend to come and ask for extensions, and you get another bite of the cherry. But most important of all, if they misbehave or misuse what was previously a local authority asset, you as the freeholder have all sorts of covenants over them, and you can enforce those covenants. And frankly, you're taking a short-term receipt for the detriment, in my view, of your grandchildren who serve on this council, or whoever's around at that time who could get more. And I pray in aid of that. If I benchmarked a piece of land that I know in Croydon quite well, I know it changed hands for £6,000 in 1960. It's up for £575,000 this week, and that's a 100 times increase in a 50-year period. So if you held on to that freehold, you know, the next generations of councillors in this place would have another golden jackpot to be benefiting the people of this town in about 50, 60, 70 years' time. But my main issue is the lack of information. We can't refer this. It's not a key decision. You're expecting us to nod this through. And I'm afraid, you know, I don't have a power head. I really do. You're nodding it through. But I really don't think this is the way for openness and everything else that you're purporting to put around this town. There's just nothing here for anybody to talk about.
Let's get a few facts on the table. It's actually here to note when the Cabinet member makes a decision, it's then a key decision. And then if you want to, you can, of course, call it into scrutiny. You can, of course, have briefings. And of course, we are actually having a discussion in public with the cameras on, which from a previous administration that brought us controversial, shall I put it politely, heat-to-waste plants, secret sell-offs of libraries, and huge expenditure on new offices, and a whole raft of other things, all decisions taken behind closed doors. I really don't think we'll be taking too many lectures in transparency. But anyway, we've had a range of questions there dating from 1960 whatever to the present day. So Councillor Simon Hall.
Thank you, Leader. Just to start off on SEN transport, absolutely the needs of users will be paramount. As you will be aware that we've inherited a situation where of less than ideal arrangements, and as I explained earlier this year at Cabinet when looking at the Q1 financial review, the emergency procurement of after the Ruskin collapse led on its own to over 400,000 a year pressure. What we're doing is trying to sort out a service where we have a proper framework where the charging basis in terms of, for example, per mile, gives us greater flexibility and also better value for money. So we've looked at it, but the whole reason we're doing the framework and putting that in place to give us the flexibility so that as users' needs change, up, down or just different, we have got contracts in place that allow us to respond to those needs. What we're also doing, as set out in the paper, is looking at potentially, but over a longer term, whether there are different delivery models, whether there are things that might change that demand in terms of things like promoting further independent travel and other such measures. So, and that's why we wanted a framework rather than being tied into particular contracts, particular routes and levels. So absolutely the needs of users are paramount. Again, that's why there's the extension so that this can be done in a coordinated basis from June onwards, such that users, the parents of users and so on, have got that clarity. So I hope that gives you the reassurance. Yes, as in every area, we're looking at to see savings, but not at the detriment of users. In terms of Addington Palace, I mean, I'd take some of the comments a bit more seriously if we hadn't had the experience of things like Riesco sell-off and so on. But in terms of this specific, clearly there was a glitch in terms of the availability online of the papers, and I absolutely give assurances that we'll work with officers to make for that not to happen again in terms of the website. In terms of information to ward members about assets, I certainly know that there were things that went on in my ward that I wasn't given advance notice of till papers, and I think colleagues around the table will remember that. So, this idea that there's this automatic right to be given very early notice of these things, simply didn't happen. But what we are doing in terms of protecting the interests of Croydon residents, and that is the key thing. We are looking at all assets, and there's an asset strategy paper coming to Cabinet later this year. But the whole reason why, as set out in the paper, it's a 999-year lease, is such that if there is any proposal for change of use, if there are any issues about the performance of the company taking out the 999-year lease, then we have the power to act just like we do in the long lease that's now. Now, in terms of use for any other purpose, it's made clear that there are no plans for that, and that, given the nature of the site, that's very unlikely. But the whole point of having the 999-year lease, rather than a disposal of freehold, is such that we have those protections. Now, information that I understand that the Golf Club has provided indicates that they will see this as an opportunity to get other funding to develop further their services, to create further employment, so to actually have an improved facility in the area. So I think this is something that's been welcomed. In terms of the financials, it's been worked through in terms of giving us a real tangible benefit and dealing with the issue that we have about funding our capital expenditure needs to meet the needs of the residents of Croydon.
Thank you, Simon. Very detailed answer. Briefly then, Councillor Pollard.
I just want to come back on the comment you made earlier about transparency and about a number of things that you talked about where decisions under the previous administration were made, in your words, behind closed doors. The fact of the matter is that under the previous administration, some items of business were not able to be discussed in public because they related to contracts, and that remains the case under this new administration because that's the law. The difference is that members from both sides had the opportunity, through published papers that were available to the committee members, to discuss those matters and to very often, as Councillor Mead alluded, come to an agreement that it was the right thing to do. That is what is entirely missing in the new process that you have created. And I do accept that a new administration coming in is going to want to have a look at how things are done and is going to want to make changes, but I think this is a change that was made without sufficient thought. It does give the impression, even if it is not necessarily the fact, you claim it's not the fact, I'm not so sure, that you are making these decisions entirely without scrutiny, entirely behind closed doors, with nobody from any organisation being able to scrutinise them. That is quite clearly not acceptable.
The fact you can say that with a sense of the irony that we're sitting here in public with the cameras on, it's a little bit. Yeah, we've heard that there was one set of papers that could have been online and weren't, and I think you've had, and if you've not had it directly, you can have apology from me on that. You know, mistakes will occasionally happen, but I don't think we should, attack officers of democratic services or wherever in public. I think, occasionally a mistake will be made, but we are in public, so let's try and behave ourselves. Can we note the report and move on, please? Thank you. No, I'm not going round again. We've been round that several times. So if we can now move on to the next agenda item, please, which is the Croydon Food Flagship Borough. Louisa. Number 9, is it? What is that? The Croydon Promise Delivery Board, I apologise. Number 9, Alison.
Thank you. This is quite a straightforward paper about setting up a Croydon Promise Delivery Board as part of the local strategic partnership. You've seen at Cabinet before that we've delivered the Croydon Promise, and this is about actually making sure that comes to, that actually happens, and that we can guide that through and we can monitor what's happening and ensure that it delivers for the town. So this is just about setting up the board. It's in its early days. We talk about the membership. The members of the opposition there have talked about how their interest in the past around planning and growth, so we hope that the appropriate member from the opposition will be able to join us on the board, and that it will be a set of people from Croydon who will be able to ensure that we deliver for the town.
Thank you, Alison. We got a lot of very positive coverage out there in the media last week on this issue, which is absolutely fantastic. But this is now about delivery of absolutely crucial infrastructure, homes, housing for Croydon, and this is about making sure that we can deliver those that infrastructure, those homes, and those jobs. And actually, we've got a group of people entirely focused on that. Happy to take any questions, or Jason.
Thank you very much. Note the paper. Can I just clarify what Councillor Butler's just said, that under 3.3 that the minority group will be represented on this board? I take it that's what you just said.
Good. With that agreement, are we happy to agree the paper? Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. If we can now move to agenda item 10, the Food Flagship Borough.
Right, thank you, Chair. As a food flagship borough, it gives us a great opportunity to improve health and well-being, especially to improve health fastest in our more deprived communities, narrowing the gap between the most and least well-off. And I do acknowledge that it was under the previous administration that this bid was put on. And at that stage, we wondered why we want Croydon to become a food flagship borough. If you look at the levels of childhood obesity, the figures are truly shocking. There's nearly a quarter of all 4-year-olds, and more than a third of 10-year-olds, and 2/3 of adults in Croydon are overweight or obese. And these figures, some of these figures, are even higher in some of Croydon's poorest communities. So being a food flagship borough is part of our plan to turn the tide on this public health issue. And therefore, the three outcomes desired are a reduction in levels of child obesity, an increase in school attainment, and a decrease in numbers of new cases of type 2 diabetes. And Croydon is ideally placed for this flagship idea, as the food flagship programme set out in the paper touches many of our ambitious for Croydon goals, including longer, healthier lives, healthy and resilient families, and quality schools and learning. And it builds on some of the projects that we already have in place, including Croydon Heart Town, the Community Food Learning Centre, and Healthy Schools programme. We already have many existing and emerging examples of initiatives that all add value to the Food Flagship Challenge. And now we're seeing some examples. We have the Surrey Street Eatery, as it's called, and on that Surrey Street Eatery, next slide, we have the liquid pod that promotes a healthy food alternative that would challenge the taste buds. Next slide, we have Olivier's Bakery that produced freshly baked croissant, Danish and savouries, and the thing is that he uses local farmers and local markets ingredients. And next slide, plum bombs. I know that this is referring to high-quality cakes, but we must note, and we're talking about healthy eating. However, very importantly, they use fresh, seasonal fruit and veg in this project. And it is important to know that you can have cakes, but you can actually focus on being the cakes that are better for you, so to speak. Right, next slide. Mum's Chef is something that will be a social enterprise addressing long-term unemployed by harnessing their culinary skills. There is an issue of a lot of, especially some in our community who are from more disadvantaged groups in communities, so to speak, who are disconnected from employment, and a lot of these people do have culinary skills, and this will be a way of getting them back into the market and focusing on their skills. Next slide. This is the Community Food Learning Centre, and I know the title says Good Food Matters, but this learning centre is all about showing that good food does matter, and this is a shot of the classroom of people learning to cook properly. Next slide. And here you have the same centre with them growing what I think is beetroot, is it? And obviously youngsters learning to cook. And the good thing about this centre is it is obviously up in the borders of Fieldway and New Addington. It's actually in part of the fields actually in New Addington. They're one of the centres in Fieldway. The good thing about it is it's inspirational, and it is the absolute, it's an example, it's a model of how one would be growing good food and practicing the skill of cooking healthily, growing the food, cooking healthily, and passing on that skill to youngsters. Next slide. There we have the cooking training facilities. Next slide. Here again we can see them growing food. And at this stage I'll hand over to Councillor Fleming. Perhaps you'd like to say something about schools.
Thank you. So as you can see, the number of schools that there are in Croydon, and the hope is that the food flagship will act as the schools will be a catalyst for that change, and the idea will be centre around 3 key themes. You eat the food, you grow the food, you cook it. So it could be you grow, you cook, you eat, but ultimately it would always keep going round in a circle, and the long-term impact that in turn will have on families in Croydon as a whole. Croydon was chosen in particular out of 20 boroughs. 2 were chosen, Croydon and Lambeth. And a lot of the choice in relation to the schools was to do with our Healthy Schools programme and the success that we have across the borough there. So as part of this, we'll be cooking with all the schools to improve their school food standards. And the flagship will support a smaller number of schools that will need extra support to help them to improve faster. And the success of the Croydon's Healthy Schools programme is one, as I said, of the reasons why we were chosen. Learning how to grow food and the experiences on the satisfaction of cooking and eating will also change our shopping habits and the health across Croydon. So, and just finally, just to touch on the obesity and overweight levels that we have within the borough, we also have some issues in relation to tackling child hunger, and there will be some key projects within the food flagship that will look at tackling child hunger within the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Very powerful presentation. We were very pleased to be awarded the status of food borough along with Lambeth, and there's a lot of work was already going on in Croydon, which that recognises. It's a huge priority. We had a very positive meeting, myself and cabinet colleagues down here. Was it only last week with Rosie Boycott, the Mayor's food ambassador? She made it very clear, a view I very much hold, that the right to eat healthy food is a basic human right. It's no less than that. And we've got a massive challenge. I mean, that was one of the most optimistic meetings I've had recently. One of the most depressing meetings on one level was the week before, when we met all the food bank providers in Croydon, doing some fantastic work, but the deeply worrying conversations there about every one of them expectation was that the demand on their services, if you like, was only going to go upwards over the next 12 months. So we've got a massive challenge here as we see a lot of investment and opportunities coming into Croydon, that we've still got a lot of people in need of some basic healthy food, and I think this programme and the way we can get this into schools and education gives us an opportunity to turn that agenda around for future generations, as well as help the current generations. So thank you, colleagues, for the work you did on this as the presentations. Any questions? Maria and then Margaret.
Thank you very much, Leader. I thought the presentation was very good, and very pleased to see this paper coming forward. I think it's very important in lots of ways. Clearly, obesity and all the problems attending on that does need to be tackled in Croydon, so I think this is a way forward. Healthy Schools, as they say, has been very successful in Croydon. I note there are going to be some changes to that, so I'd like to know a little bit about how that's going to work. And if I have one concern, is that I think while it's very important that this is dealt with in schools, there's a lot of pressure being put on schools, and they have, of course, a lot of challenges. So I was very interested to see in 3.9 the development and establishment of a food partnership board, and I think that's very important as well, to widen it all out, because as I think the presentation showed, there are various different ways that this could be approached. And, you can still leave schools, particularly secondary schools, and you have all this advice about healthy eating, and go to a fast food outlet. And they are things, I think, that we need to look at, how that's managed in the borough. But all in all, I think it's very positive, very good for Croydon, and I certainly welcome it. And clearly, if there's anything that we can do on this side to help them, then we will be very happy to do that. And I'm delighted to see in the presentation that you can get vegan cakes in Croydon. I never knew you could before, so I'm looking forward to trying those. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for those comments. Yes, you can literally now have your cake and eat it in Croydon. So I hope everybody will. Margaret.
Yes, thank you, Alida. Well, I obviously welcome this report. I'd first of all like to start off by thanking all those people who worked so hard in the bid, and I'm really pleased that Croydon is one of the 2 London boroughs who have achieved this food flagship borough. So well done to all of them. I do have a few comments. I mean, it was a very interesting presentation. I was really pleased to see Evie Findlater from New Addington in one of those. She did sterling work under the Heart Town programme to encourage people to grow, cook and eat. And I do agree, you need to complete that circle. And a lot of work has gone on in the schools, but we do need to put a little bit more help into those schools who are perhaps not achieving as much as they could. Yes, Croydon does have poor statistics in childhood obesity, and I do think Croydon has the opportunity, becoming a food flagship borough, to change the concept for our young adults. Similarly, there's naturally a phrase now to say it's not cool to start smoking, and I think we should turn that around and say it is cool to eat healthy and less healthy foods in moderation, and I think that perhaps is a strapline that maybe the younger people would do that. The report also mentions in the detailed appendix that this is going to be for supporting younger adults up to 14. But I'm asking, why are you stopping there? Because if you did do that, then we'd be supporting children in primary school and then up to 14. And there's a lot of work going along now with sort of older adolescents and older people as well, and families. So you would have a gap. So I would be asking you to look at continuing that support through and not stopping at 14. I was pleased to see the work in 3.6 with Surrey Street, but there's no mention of working with allotments in the borough. We have very productive allotments, and they have helped not only in encouraging those not keen on growing and eating their own. I do think there's a bit of work around there as well. And in 3.8, yes, we do have a worry about fast food applications. So similarly, as I was asked, could I ask a cabinet member, and actually it's across the cabinet departments, what are you doing about applications when they come in, and what are we doing to incentivise those existing and new outlets to provide healthy options? Can we encourage them, because they need something to do that, so you need to incentivise them either by giving them accreditation. So I think we should be looking at that as well. And I think the Food Partnership Board should be cross-section of all those establishments, restaurants, eateries, and again, encouraging them to be more healthy options, offering those. I think it's good to be also twinned with Lambeth in that way. You learn a lot from other boroughs. What works for Lambeth may not work for Croydon, but there are some things that would work in Croydon. So I welcome that cross-party workshop. So I'm welcoming the details in the back of all the projects, but I do think it lacks a little bit of work around working more with businesses. We've already made a really good start with the schools, and I think we were moving on more to working with businesses. So I'd like to see a lot more working with businesses. I went to a partnership event on the 25th of September, which was really good. How are we getting on, Margaret? I've just got half an hour on the clock. Yeah, but I thought the catching display for me was the Funky Foods display. There were parents and young children taking a great interest in taking away recipes, and I think if we do more of that as well, that would help. So I hope the comments are helpful, but I support the paper, welcome it, and yes, if there's just anything we can do to support this, we do have a problem, but together I think we can fight the challenge.
Thank you. I welcome the comments, and there clearly is things, councillors from across the borough in terms of our role as councillors with the community, but also governors, where people are governors or work with governors. I think there's invaluable work there in terms of the schools. I think we're talking about much closer working with this administration with the business communities in due course, and I hope we can reinforce some of those links there. I think on the fast food issue, and I think there's a lot of cross-party support in many places across London, hopefully as well as here. Whatever the colour of the next national government is, we need to see greater powers devolved to local government so we can have a much stronger say in how many fast food outlets, what the quality they are, and also that other one that exercises a lot of us, the amount of betting shops shops in some areas, so that actually local government can shape better the communities and district centres we represent. So that's part of an agenda that I know some colleagues opposite, and certainly I'm driving with ministers and shadow ministers that we need those powers devolved locally, and that's how ultimately we'll have a much greater ability to tackle the many good fast food outlets in Croydon, but some ones that certainly most of us I don't think would use. Louisa.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there is work being done with fast food outlets, because I'm sure that there are issues now. We're looking at what we can do around the rules on the licensing, because a lot of it relates back to licenses. But there are also incentives which we have already started looking at, which you can give to fast food outlets. So obviously they have to, for example, I know now a certain fast food outlet that they do provide more salads, for example. So there does have to be some negotiation when people are being granted licenses, some stipulation as to what they would provide. And in a reply to your comments, Margaret, Councillor Mead, about allotments being involved, it is in there in the appendix. And as a matter of fact, the project to which we referred, the Community Food Learning Centre, is a model of how you use allotment, and you do give examples of people growing their food, cooking it in a healthy way, and obviously enjoy proof that healthy food can be very tasty and enjoyable. And I think that I can see a few more.
I've got that under control. Don't worry.
Yes.
So I'll bring in our chair of our Health and Wellbeing Board, very important role on this agenda, as many others. Councillor Maggie Mansell.
Yes, thank you. And I do appreciate the work which Councillor Margaret Mead has done on Hart Town, which does feed into this project, and of course was one of the things that helped us to gain this particular project. I think it is very, and if I can just answer the point about the adults growing food, yes, we will be working with the Culture Department, the Parks Department, about facilities for adults growing their own, and there are projects already for people experiencing mental health problems, which is often very therapeutic. But in the appendix, the penultimate column, under Flagship project outputs, fruit and vegetables grown in schools and community. So those two words cover allotments. This is particularly beneficial both at the individual level and for community. Obviously, we measure statistics in terms of the population statistics, but we expect this to work on an individual level, family level, and community. We welcome the range of parts to this project. The GLA input will do some negotiation with the multinational businesses like Tesco's and Sainsbury's and all the others, so that we can work both at that level to, for instance, reduce the use of trans fats, and also, of course, the working with individuals and communities, changing habits person by person, group by group. So all those things are important, and of course we're particularly involved, as you see from the appendix, in that detailed work. But we expect the benefits to be long-term. Yes, it's 2-year funding at the moment, but it's 5-year for monitoring, but this should change people's lives and make a difference in the long term for individuals and for the community. Poverty is a lack of money, but it's also a lack of skills and a lack of time, and often a lack of homes or space, so that all those issues can be improved by working with people individually, and particularly on the diet and nutrition. So we want to see better health, better employment and personal resilience, and we expect to see this in the long term. So it's good for Croydon, healthy Croydon. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Maggie. I've seen a couple of other contributors, Matthew Karamaya and Councillor Tony Letts.
Thank you very much,
Councillor
Leader.
Simon
I mean, I think some of the points I was going to raise have been raised either by Councillor Mead and Maggie now. I think the idea that we would make use of the allotments in terms of the execution of this project would be a useful one, to have a network of allotments which will be linked to schools, so that school children will have the practice of going to see how these things are grown. And also, in terms of the length of the program, the 2 years, I know Maggie just said that there will be a 5-year monitoring period, but let's be sure that we're not going to tell people it's a 2-year thing so that it's going to end before it starts, because when you're going to involve schools, with my experience in schools, schemes of work and learning plans takes a lot of time to develop. And by the time you finish developing them, the program is coming to an end. So maybe we will need to have to look at the long term, because I think food production and food consumption is a kind of a long term thing. And then finally, one more point that I would like to add is the fact that the commitment that the council is going to make towards this maybe should go beyond in kind. We may have to think about how innovative we could be with adding to or pushing the GLA to lengthen its input, and what we can add in terms of making this a sustainable and long-term project. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I think they're really excellent points. And actually, the recommendations of the paper do say that what we're doing at the moment is noting progress on the development of the food flagship, and we're actually developing the programme. So this is hopefully something we're doing live, if you like, in this meeting as well as other meetings. So it's a very good contributions all round, and we need more of them, which is a good moment to bring in Councillor Tony Letts.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Leader. Some of the things I was going to say has already been said, but what I want to reassure, I think it was Margaret Mead who said about local businesses. Part of the idea of Surrey Streetery, I have to get that name right, Streetery, is that they will buy their local vegetables and their meat, etc., from Surrey Street, so to help that chartered market and to help that grow and that develop. But equally, I think it's very important that the children know what vegetables are. The example I'll give you is that a new mum that I've met, her little fellow went to school and he started in September, and she said he loves his school dinners, but he thinks that carrots are oranges, because he'd never had carrots at home. And I think that's very, very sad. But too, I welcome the paper. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Important distinction there. Simon Hall.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say a couple of points which I think go to some of the points that Margaret made in terms of involving adults and communities. If you take Good Food Matters charity and the work that they're doing, that work very much is they're getting families involved in all the growing of crops, as well as learning what to do once you've successfully grown. And in fact, you could see on some of the pictures that there are raised beds, which means that older people and those with people with disabilities can actually actively participate. And all the pathways between the beds are designed so that, for example, wheelchairs and so on can use them, despite the fact that it's on a slope. The other piece about that particular one, and I happen to live on the same road as it's happening, is that it's enabled the number of allotment plots to be nearly doubled. So actually, not only does it provide very good facilities and facilities for adults as well as young people to get involved and to learn in terms of food, but it's actually providing more allotment opportunities. And I think that's the sort of thing where you can see a very joined up approach that's going to deliver in terms of the health outcomes.
To finish, Louisa?
Yes, just to reply to one of the comments that Matthew made. It is important to get schools involved, but I know that, Elisa will confirm this, that there is a move to have more of your grow your own on a school site, so that the youngsters are aware of it being, rather than walk into allotments, they're aware of how food is grown and produced on the school site. So that's one of the focuses.
Very much, colleagues, across the piece there for some valuable contributions. They've been noted. Anyone who has any further thoughts on this, contact our Cabinet members or the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board as well, because this is policy being developed in terms of delivery. And anybody who's watching the webcast or has any thoughts on this, contact the Council and with your thoughts as well. And we'll continue to evolve this and also bring a progress report back at the appropriate moment. Thank you. Can we agree the paper? Thank you very much for that. If we can move on to the crucial issue of West Croydon regeneration, agenda item 11, and can I hand over to Councillor Tony Letts? Do we have a presentation?
Thank you very much, yes. Well, it gives me great pleasure to present this paper to you. Could we have the first slide, please? Thank you very much. I think we all know about the Don't Mess with Croydon campaign, which was successfully launched very shortly after our election. And feedback from residents in the area of West Croydon has been very positive, and with direct targeting of offenders has really made an impact. And this is improving confidence in our response, which in turn is increasing the volume of reporting. I think we have a great deal of reporting. The shop front and the building front refurbishment has already started, and it started in August on London Road, with the main phase due to start later this year. Collectively, this will see 40 shop fronts refurbished with an investment of £600,000. We continue to lobby the Mayor of London for further funding to extend this scheme, and I'd like Councillor Steve O'Connell to note this, because the people from St James's Road onwards, they would very much like to see that, and there is a reflective of demand for this project further down London Road. Complementary to the shop front improvements, the public realm improvements are really kicking off in London Road and kicking off in the right area. Regular visitors to the area have already noticed a substantial amount of work which is underway. The scheme will complete in early summer 2015 and will really benefit traders who should see more shoppers and visitors in the area. The scheme reflects an investment in total of over 2 million. Next slide, please. No, the one before that. Sorry. The West Croydon Investment Programme reflects our commitment to support physical improvements works with the social and economic support that can be beneficial to an inclusive and fair regeneration response for everyone. I think it has been a success story. Just some of the outcomes delivered so far have been the new enterprise hub. As of August 2014, it had supported 58 businesses, created 44 jobs, and enabled 41 start-up businesses. The Entrepreneurs of the Future has delivered guidance and support to 91 young entrepreneurs and led to 14 start-ups of people into employment. And I have to say, having met some of those young people, their energy and their vibrancy is just amazing. And by golly, some of them will end up Alan Sugars, I have no doubt. The Local Employment Creation Project has delivered 48 people into employment with a further 31 job opportunities identified. The Safer Cleaner project has provided a dedicated coordinator who has worked tirelessly, and I have to say tirelessly, to develop strong relationships with local traders. In addition, 40 safer radios have been rolled out, improving the local network intelligence. 100 ultraviolet counterfeit banknote detectors have also been provided to the local businesses free of charge and very much welcomed by them. We are now providing grants of up to £1,000 per property for crime prevention measures. The Rutan branch has led 120 children aged between 14 and 16 years of age through a highly successful mentoring programme, ending in a major reception event at the City Hall. I do believe that Councillor Steve O'Connell was there present at that event. And 5 schools in the West Croydon have benefited from this really positive feedback. The Community Connectors and Social Audit has created over 60 local connectors, and that's quite amazing, with Croydon widely regarded as a leader in Europe within the asset-based community development. And this approach to strengthening and building community links is just amazing, and it doesn't work. The retail support package is commencing with support for up to 25 traders. Now, I know there's been TfL are developing the bus station, and to be scrupulously fair and honest, there has been 1 or 2 moans that there isn't sufficient siting to the relocated bus stops, but I have been speaking to my colleague, Councillor Cathy B, with regard to this. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. It's not just the public sector investment, as you've already heard earlier tonight from my colleague and the Deputy Leader, Councillor Alison Butler, that substantial pipeline of new housing, with much of it to be affordable. There'll be 99 units at Bedford House, 37 units in the Half Moon Pub site, and 26 units at Leonard Lodge, not to mention the redevelopment of Delta Point, the significant regeneration of the interchange, offering 180,000 square feet of Grade A office space, and other nearby developments. On top of this, there is a genuine pipeline of opportunities coming through. And I know that Councillor Jason Perry was at the event last week, and the Expo for 116 businesses, and you could feel the energy there for people wanting to grow and develop even further. The final slide. But this is just the beginning, colleagues. There is so much more to do. The regeneration of West Croydon Public Interchange will start next summer. The retail support is just beginning. This will be supported by the Meanwhile Use project that is to start in 2015 as well. The area will see a brand new secondary school delivered. There is a real momentum about the area, and Councillor Wayne Lawler and myself are regular walkers of London Road. And we know that the local businesses and residents, with support of the council, looking at how they can redefine the area to encourage more shoppers and visitors. With all the investment going into West Croydon, which is well in excess of 50 million, the local community can look forward to the future with confidence and indeed excitement. I do have some news off the press, and that is that TfL have just given the council permission for the Bedford Road crossing, and that will make a huge difference to people as well. Finally, before I end, I would like to thank Tim Watson, the officer who has worked so hard with the businesses and the residents. Not often an easy task in the dark days, but with his total understanding of their needs. Job well done. I just wanted to say thank you very much, Nick. I'll happily take any questions.
Thank you, Tony, very much indeed. And no, I've not seen yourself and Councillor Wayne Law looking so fit and healthy in years for all the walking you've been doing up and down our various district centres. But West Croydon, absolutely fundamental in terms of this administration's priorities, and really fantastic to see so much progress and hear of the excellent further news from our colleagues at TfL tonight, what you just shared with us there. So this is a major part of the regeneration of Croydon. So very welcome indeed. Contributions? I've got Councillor Stuart Collins. Then Councillor Wayne Lawler.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. That's really inspiring. I know the work that you and Wayne have been doing down there is excellent, but I wanted to say that I think on 4.2 of the paper we're talking about consultation, and I think where we've done this very well, and thanks very much to Nick on this, is that we've widened it out to the people living in the residential roads by making sure that we've, for the first time in a long time, got the dialogue going with them about what's happening in the area with respect to the school, with also respect to the Don't Mess with Croydon campaign, with respect to what's happening. I know now that we're getting TfL to write to people in the local area, and also the wonderful idea of actually consulting with the residents and the traders about the branding of London Road. I think it's really exciting that the council's involving those people, so that when the cynicism about nothing's happening was going on, I felt it was because we didn't have that dialogue. So I'd like to congratulate all the staff and yourselves for making sure that happens, because people, when I've walked down London Road, have come up to me and actually said, I was going down there to tell them what was happening, they were coming up and saying, this is great and we've heard this is happening, and that is such a welcome change in that area. So well done everyone, and can we continue the consultation with them as each step happens, so that they're all fully informed and engaged in it, because that's the way forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Wayne.
Thank you very much, Leader. Councillor Letts has alluded to the visits we've paid to London Road, talking to the traders there, and what's really been very clear and come across quite strongly is just how welcome this project is, and how much in need of regeneration West Croydon is needed. The police presence is a really important issue down there, and we've listened to concerns of the traders, so we have taken that on board. But I think the future is bright for West Croydon, and personally I think it's taken a Labour administration to do this. It certainly wouldn't have happened on the previous administration.
Thank you, Wayne. Indeed, yes, which is a neat moment to bring in Councillor Jason Perry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Newman. I was going to sort of, do all the complimentary stuff, and then Councillor Lawler suddenly takes credit for 2-3 years' work. Has only happened since the Labour administration came into town. I mean, this is a good paper, and it details the work that the previous administration started and the current administration is working and running with. It's going well down in West Croydon, but I don't think in this chamber, we can't take all the credit, you can't take all the credit. It's been good, hard work. Officers have worked very hard. Nick Watson's been mentioned tonight. He's been known as Mr. London Road for many months and years in the council, and it's that dialogue and trust that's been built up over those many months and years that has enabled this development that we're now seeing in London Road to come forward. And many of the things that are listed in this paper happened a long time before May this year, and were very much the work of the previous administration. The Bedford Road scheme, I was very pleased to go to the groundbreaking of that scheme last year, that £20 million development of housing that will be coming into West Croydon. So it's a piece of work that's been a long time coming, but I think we all acknowledge that it's the planning that goes into these processes that actually delivers a good scheme on site at the end of the day, and that's why these schemes take time, and that's why we'll be looking into 2015 before the scheme's finished, because they do take time. A quick question with regard to the General Hospital. When I was sitting on that side of the bench, as it were, Councillor Collins would always ask me about the General Hospital site, and I think he saw it as a golden opportunity to deliver a police station, to deliver parking, to deliver a public park and many other community facilities. As you're now sort of heading into the planning stage, I wonder how are plans progressing to deliver all those community benefits that Councillor Collins certainly was looking for, and I was certainly hopeful of delivering myself there. I'd like to know how they're actually progressing and how you're going to deliver all those.
Thank you. Well, as you well know, there's a school going on there, so we're talking to them as well about how we combine the two. I mean, I think we do need to, look, we don't want to get into political point scoring this time of night particularly, but I do think that if you look back at the awful events of 2011 and you look at the progress that was rightly made down in Southend, the fact the previous administration took so long to get round to focusing on West Croydon, You know, it's been made very clear to me in private conversations with senior officials who work for a Conservative, not a Labour mayor at City Hall, that they were quite horrified at the delays they found and the chaos they found under the previous administration. And so actually, I'm afraid on this occasion, I don't always say this, but it has taken a Labour administration to come in. I don't doubt your personal commitment to some of these projects, Jason, but the chaos that was part of the leadership of the previous administration meant that in terms of City Hall, they simply weren't getting delivery, and we've now had a Labour administration, and it's taken a Labour administration to work with a Conservative mayor to deliver for the people of West Croydon. Councillor Steve O'Connor.
So if I may, Lee,
Dudley, if we could be quiet, otherwise we won't hear Steve.
I'd prefer not to have a sort of partisan conversation. We were doing so well until Wayne made his contribution. I mean, I spend, like colleagues, a significant amount of time down London Road, and I'm delighted at this paper. I'm delighted that the GLA and the TfL have come up to their mark, and the Mayor also, because the commonality across both administrations is the same Mayor, and dare I say it, the same GLA member. But can I just pick up on Councillor Perry's comment about the police station, or police premises, or police base? I know for a fact that Mopac and the Deputy Mayor have written to the Borough Commander on the back of the riot report, saying that a recommendation was that there should be a police presence, perhaps parading, perhaps at the very least a contact base along the lines. And in the previous administration's plans, that was very much to the fore, and I know Stuart quite rightly took every opportunity at previous cabinets to take that position. It seems to be missing here. I guess that's a kind of oversight, and so I'd just like a bit of clarity around that.
Leader, can I just come in here on that very point?
Yes.
I would really like Councillor O'Connell to work with Stephen Greenhall, who has written and has said that there is capital funding for a contact police station, whatever that might be. So, you know, can you find out more about it, etc., and you know, please speak up for it. There is no revenue cost, but I understand there are capital costs.
If I may come back, I mean, the arrangements that we always envisioned was that there will be a contact centre or a place where police could parade around public local authority builds. So there are plans to build, led by the council, a school and other facilities in London Road. It would be right to design in some police facilities with the support of the Met and Mopac. You're not going to get a brand new police station, because life isn't like that. But the Deputy Mayor, the will is there from the Deputy Mayor and others to have some sort of police presence on London Road. That's expected. Expectations have been raised across the chamber, and I think it lacks a bit there, and we need to drill that down.
I'm really left speechless, but that contribution nearly achieved that. From the man that defended the closure of every police station in Croydon, bar one, I find that quite extraordinary, Councillor O'Connell. However, we are where we are, so we will ensure that you do work with us to lobby the current Conservative Deputy Mayor in London to make sure that we do get that base back on the London Road. But I repeat, people would make their own judgments about how long the London Road was left without both a police station, in some cases police, and certainly the regeneration we're seeing tonight. It was too many years it was neglected. That wrong is now being corrected. Councillor Sherwin Chowdhury. And then Councillor Hamida Ali.
Thank you, Leader. This is one of the best positive starting point of this administration, because it's left so long, and now people of Croydon can see the light end of the tunnel, because they suffered so much. Even the suffering, the current situation, they said, okay, no problem, we can wait, because now building construction is started. So I think it's very positive, and this is, of course, people, if they would have good intention, they could have started long time ago, but they didn't bother, because that doesn't come in this part of the borough, because they always come up to the town hall, and so south of the borough. That's why they didn't bother. Now, we care about community, that's why we had to start, and we are doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherwin. Hamida.
Thank you, Leader. I support the comments that colleagues on this side of the chamber have made about this paper. But the point I actually wanted to make is more administrative, and specifically about the equalities related paragraphs in our papers. I wasn't sure when the right time to make this intervention would be, and I've chosen this item perhaps because of its relevance, but it might be made of a number of papers that I've read in the last few meetings. There's often lots of activity that's going on in relation to the work that we're doing, which demonstrates how we are meeting the needs and requirements of the complexity of our population, but I don't always see that in the equalities paragraphs. And I guess it's a plea to officers more than anything to have that section of the report to give me a bit more detail, particularly as a new councillor, the assurance of how equality and diversity has been duly considered and not missing the opportunity to capture all the positive activity that is being undertaken.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important because so many of these agenda items are about addressing what are fundamental inequalities for communities down there. And I think for those who don't have the opportunity of the webcast, that we and perhaps only get to read the papers, that is set out as clearly as possible. Okay, in terms of the paper, and I've got an eye on the clock, but I don't want to be Councillor Bernadette Khan.
Leader, what I was going to observe too in relation to the police hub presence in our areas is that in fact the safer neighbourhood teams have to go all the way over to Gypsy Hill where their base is, when you think of the time wasting and the travelling and all that and the additional burden that puts on their role in wards like West Thornton and all along that London road. I think that is also why it's very important we have a base nearer where the action happens for the officers whose role it is, and they are very committed to addressing areas of concern in our wards, rather than have to travel all the way over to Gypsy Hill to a base there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette, and graphically illustrating why the closure of so many of those police stations by Mayor Johnson was frankly unacceptable and in some cases disastrous. Councillor Lisa Fleming.
Just very briefly to touch on the school in the London Road, and just to let you know, as a point of information, that Councillor Stuart Collins and I have met with the school to speak about some of those concerns, as you mentioned, in terms of policing, etc., for the amount of young people that there will be in the centre of the town. And there are discussions about the possibilities of different opening and closing times, etc. And just to touch on Hamida's point, in relation to qualities and diversity, again, it is something that Councillor Collin and I have spoken about, on the basis that members of the ward have approached him and looking at ideas about the school and its presence within the community and reaching the wider audience. So we're looking at, for example, but it's not something that we have a jurisdiction over, but more a kind of influencing role, i.e. the type of specialism of the school. Could it better support the surrounding area and the shops, i.e. maybe perhaps a business school or something like that, but it's something that we have suggested.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Okay, excellent news, excellent progress, Councillor Tony Letts, but a lot more to do down there, and we'll crack on with it. So thank you very much for tonight's presentation and paper. Could we agree the paper? Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, and I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you.